31 years of age, just under 31, but including people that are 30 years old. Those are considered to be children under the Obama administration. And as people realize that this was not talking about granting amnesty retroactively to people who had been here for some time, but it was proactive, incentivizing people to come in. Think about what's going on here. When we arrest American fathers because they have a child who is a half a mile away from his home, when they arrest him for child endangerment, when we arrest parents for child endangerment because they leave their children in a hot car and because that kills some children, what about reckless endangerment when Obama incentivizes people to send their children, even if they accompany their children across the desert? That is child endangerment, and he is incentivizing that. He is an accessory to that. But of course, we still have the Republicans who don't want to move about this, who are saying, let's not get too hasty here. One of those is Pat Buchanan. He writes on WND, impeachment, that would be a bridge too far. Yeah, Obama's pretty bad, but he says Republicans should drop talk of impeachment. He said, now, it was different with Bill Clinton. With Bill Clinton, the impeachers had a solid case of perjury, and with Richard Nixon, they had preponderance of evidence that at least for a time he had sought to obstruct justice in investigations of the Watergate break-in. But he says, as of yet, there's no evidence that Obama knew of the IRS plot to delay and deny tax exemptions to Tea Party groups, which would have been an abuse of power and a trampling on the constitutional rights of Tea Partiers who were denied the equal protection of the law. Well, that's not true. That's not true, Pat. Even if it were true, Obama and the Department of Justice are now accessories to the fact of what the IRS did. They have helped to cover that up. They have aided and abetted those cover-ups, as well as Fast and Furious and many other things. They have stonewalled. They have hidden evidence, refused to release evidence to Congress, and that was what they were coming after Nixon about. The breadth and the depth of this IRS scandal is much worse under Obama than it was under Nixon. That's like arguing that Nixon didn't actually do the burglary, so he shouldn't be impeached. That's the kind of argument that Pat Buchanan is making. Unless the Republicans will stand up and do something about it, we're not going to have any kind of change come out of this. And of course, I don't expect them to. The change is going to have to come from the people. The only hope that we have are people who are going to stand up like they did in Marietta and see if they continue to stand to tell people that they're not going to take the ignoring of our laws anymore. Stay tuned. Right after the break, we're going to have some more information. We're going to cover the NSA's voyeuristic tendencies as well as their new technology to try to read minds. Is that going to come to fruition? Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Alex Jones here to break down some exciting developments in the area of research concerning supplemental iodine. It's nothing less than phenomenal. I began to get into iodine a few years ago because it was helping me and my family so much get healthy and detoxify. And I used some of the mainline iodine supplements and they upset my stomach and I had some issues with it. Until I discovered a product being developed by Dr. Group, who I was already interviewing as an expert on my radio show, and I began taking the product before he actually rolled it out. You now know it as Survival Shield True Nascent Iodine that your body can really absorb. Then, about a year ago, he said, listen, if you think this is powerful, I'm going to come out with rare earth, deep earth crystals that are incredibly powerful that no one else has as a source for their iodine from between 7,000 and 12,000 feet, literally drilled out of the ground. You put it on a hot plate and it turns into the pure gas. No one else has 99.99% pure iodine. And the results that I personally have had have been life-changing. I was over 270 pounds. And with the iodine, exercise, and better diet, I have lost now more than 50 pounds total, and I'm continuing to lose the weight. I have more energy, my libido, all this crap came out of my skin. I believe our research is conclusive. This is the best iodine out there. And I know this for a fact. Nobody else has got iodine based on these pure crystals, ladies and gentlemen. This is innovating. This is trailblazing. And the best part is it helps fund INFOWARS.com, the radio show, the TV show, the whole media operation promoting true libertarian ideas. For a limited time, experience the ancient power of Survival Shield X2. Take advantage of this unprecedented 30% off Super Detox special at INFOWARSLife.com.
Now, I guess we could call this next story from the Washington Post the case of the accidental whistleblower. It turns out that a veteran with the CIA didn't get the memo that the CIA doesn't release any information about anything to the public anymore. This is a case of Jeffrey Scudder. He had a CIA career that included assignments in Africa, Afghanistan, and Iraq. But for 2 years, they put him in an office where he was managing the agency's historical files. And he noticed there a stack of articles, hundreds of histories, many of them decades old. He said that he thought that they ought to be released to the public. They were being stored in secret years after they should have been shared with the public. So to get them released, he submitted a FOIA request. CIA did not like that. And so what happened was, after 4 years, he is no longer with the CIA. But listen to what they did in response to his FOIA request. They said in the Washington Post, his request set in motion a harrowing sequence. He was confronted by supervisors, accused of mishandling classified information while assembling his FOIA request. His house was raided by the FBI. His family's computers were seized. He was stripped of his job and his security clearance. And he agreed to retire last year after being told that if he refused, he would risk losing his pension and probably a lot more. And of course, in retaliation, though, the CIA says this: the CIA does not retaliate or take any personnel action against employees for submitting FOIA requests or for pursuing them in litigation. Yeah, right. They've also shut down the History Office. They said, cited budget cuts and said, don't worry, we're going to be doing this somewhere else. We're going to have our declassification work done somewhere else. Well, they don't want you to know anything about them, but as we point out over and over again, they believe that they need to know everything about you. And as we learn more and more about what the paranoid security state wants to know about us and what they collect on us, it gets increasingly creepier. Look at this new article, What Your Startlingly Intimate Voyeuristic NSA File Looks Like. And this is an article from Zero Hedge that is up on INFOWARS.com today. And this quotes another Washington Post story where they say that the files that are being kept on Americans have a, quote, startlingly intimate, even voyeuristic quality. They tell stories of love and heartbreak, of illicit sexual liaisons, mental health crises, political and religious conversations, financial anxieties, disappointed hopes. The daily lives of more than 10,000 account holders who are not targeted are cataloged and recorded nevertheless. With that kind of information, you could do a lot of blackmailing, couldn't you? And of course, the people who are most susceptible to being blackmailed are people in political office, people like congressmen, people like Supreme Court justices. And of course, many of us believe that Justice Roberts was in fact blackmailed when he did, in an unprecedented move, wrote both the dissenting and the majority opinions on Obamacare. Many people believe that that would not be passed, as there was no constitutional reason for it to pass. The government cannot constitutionally require you to buy something, and he'd written that in his opinion. Then he suddenly switched it and said, that's okay, it's a tax. I'm good with it now. This has happened before. Look at this article about the secret life of J. Edgar Hoover. This is something that came out of The Guardian as Clint Eastwood's movie about J. Edgar Hoover was about to be released. And they point out a quote here from Harry Truman, who wrote this about J. Edgar Hoover. He said, we want no Gestapo or secret police. The FBI is tending in that direction. This is under Truman. They are dabbling in sex life scandals and plain blackmail. Edgar Hoover would give his right eye to take over, and all congressmen and senators are afraid of him. Is that the situation we have today with the NSA? I believe it is. If it hasn't happened already, all the groundwork has been laid there for political abuses that are much worse than what J. Edgar Hoover did. With technology, they can find out far more about anyone than they ever could during the time of J. Edgar Hoover. And we realize now that for decades, he was blackmailing congressmen, presidents, everyone. And as Truman wrote, he wants to take over. And all congressmen and senators are afraid of him. Do you think maybe they're afraid of the NSA? Well, it's going to get worse. Because we see this article from Paul Joseph Watson, coming soon, the TSA is going to use mind-reading scanners to catch terrorists. Or maybe they will just use it to intimidate the public.
That warrant authorizes the police to read this guy's mind, in this case, his memories. Because you see, in the future, not even our thoughts will be free from search and seizure. Is it the ultimate invasion of privacy? Yes, but it could also clear your good name or maybe even save your life. Today, scientists are already analyzing the mechanics of thought and creating real-life mind-reading machines.
Now, it bears worth repeating what he just said. Is it the ultimate invasion of privacy? Yes. But it could clear your name or save your life, or it could endanger you. It could, the way you get your name cleared is with a jury of your peers, not with technology. Remember when Hillary Clinton was laughing about the rapist that she got off, the pedophile rapist that she got off? And she said, he even passed a polygraph. It destroyed forever my faith in polygraphs. Technology cannot be trusted like a jury of your peers. That is due process. And of course, what he's encouraging us to do is to equate in our mind the fact that we can somehow get safety if we give up our privacy and our liberty. No, you will just be more in danger, and you will be a slave. Remember, it was Jefferson who said that the God who gave us life gave us liberty at the same time. The hand of force, that is the government, can destroy them both, but cannot destroy them or separate them. Now, in our final news today, look at what happened on this 4th of July weekend in Chicago, the place where they have the most stringent gun control laws. We had 60 people shot, 11 people killed. This is reported by the local station there, the ABC affiliate. And they said violence in Chicago over the holiday weekend once again garnered national attention. And this is what the police superintendent said. He said it's Groundhog Day in Chicago, and they say that he focused on guns that the alleged offenders had, as well as their criminal past. And he said, it all comes down to guns. Too many guns coming in and too little punishment going out. No, it actually doesn't come down to guns. I've talked many times to Jim Gierach, who is with Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, that's LEAP. He was a prosecutor for decades in Chicago. And he said that 80% of these shootings are related, again, to the war on drugs. The same thing that is collapsing the countries in Central and South America, the same thing that will collapse our country and is collapsing our country into an authoritarian, impoverished state where gangs run wild. Here's one example. It's not just the raw numbers of 60 people getting shot. Here's a story of 2 of those people who were shot. Now, this is reported by the Daily Caller. A veteran with a concealed carry permit shoots back at a Chicago gunman. Now, what happened was they had 2 groups of people. In one group, there was a woman who asked, whose bottle is this on the car, and asked them to take it. An argument ensued. One of the people in the second group went into a house, came out with his gun, and started shooting, shot her in the back twice. And 2 other people that were with him in his group started shooting at the group that had just asked, whose bottle is this on my car? At that point, one of the guys in the group that's being shot at was had a concealed carry permit, and he was a veteran, and he pulled out his gun and he returned fire, critically wounding the guy who went into the house to get his gun, and the other guys ran away. Now, the person who started the shooting has now been charged with attempted murder. He shot this woman twice in the back. And as the article points out, if this had happened last year, the veteran would not have been able to defend himself or the rest of his group from this, probably a gang, when 3 of them are armed and just start shooting over a Coke bottle or an argument like that. It was probably a gang, I don't know for sure, but he certainly would not have been able to defend himself and others. It is people like a veteran and people who are there to protect themselves. That's one of the most important uses of the Second Amendment. Of course, it's not the most important purpose of the Second Amendment, but it is nevertheless a very important part of the picture. And when they talk about 60 people being shot, we need to keep in perspective what actually happened in each of those cases and who is doing the shooting. As I pointed out, nearly 80% of these are being done by the drug gangs. That was a statistic years ago. It's probably even worse now. Well, that's it for our news tonight. Please consider supporting Prison Planet TV with your subscription. It's something you can pass on to your friends and family, and it's a way to support our operation here. Just one subscription can be shared with up to 11 other people simultaneously. Well, that's it for tonight's news. Join us tomorrow at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, but stay tuned because right after this program, We have an excerpt from Endgame. Remember I referred to that earlier in the program, that documentary? Well, there was an extra on Endgame, Battle for the Republic. And years ago, Alex Jones broke down what was going on with La Raza. So stay with us right after the show. We'll have that for you.